the tech writing market. Okay, are we recording?
Yes, we are.
Okay, awesome, great. All right, well, welcome. And really, I want to go through most of the results that we collected from this STC Technical Communicator Survey. So a little bit of background. This survey, the number of respondents, we had 45 technical communicators, people who self-identified as technical communicators in the Huntsville area. And they come from kind of a wide variety of sub-disciplines of technical communication. And we put the call out through STC. I put a call out on LinkedIn, and then I bothered a bunch of my former students to take this survey and people that I know. But 45 for our local community is a pretty good number. Average years of experience is 14. So overall, it's a pretty seasoned group of technical communicators. And they worked 38 hours a week on average. So really, it's mostly full-time people with salaried positions, as we'll see, is what this data represents. And I also should mention, not everyone answered every question. So you may see, for instance, the salary, not everybody gave us their salary. That's okay. And when that happened, I tried to break down the number of participants that were in each category, just so that we could really kind of specifically understand who we're talking here. Okay, so the group is largely female. This is representative of the technical communication profession as a whole. And I should also mention that we have been doing this survey for years and years. Rose Norman was doing this survey before I even started at UAH. But a lot of these questions are inspired by the very excellent 2018 TechCom census that was in Intercom, done by Saul Carliner. And if you haven't read it, check it out. It's 6 years old now, but it's a really good investigation of TechCom nationwide. It had about 800 participants, and I stole some of the questions from it because I thought they were so good. But yeah, this group is largely female, also largely white. I did a terrible job asking the race question, which was resonated with me even more because I taught my students how to do it the last week, and then I did it. I went back and looked at the way I had done it, and I was like, this is terrible. But they are highly educated, right? So almost all of the people in our sample have a bachelor's, and a lot actually have a master's. And of course, this can double count people that have bachelor's and master's. And so we've really got, we're demonstrating that a degree is still a common expectation among technical communicators. You do occasionally see positions where they'll even say things like, high school plus experience. It does appear that most of our technical communicators have a bachelor's or master's degree. And surprisingly, a lot of them have a degree that is specific to technical communication. And this, to me, is a big change from, say, 20 years ago, right? When people mostly had degrees in English, journalism, right, communication, and some people still do. But a lot more people are specifically holding degrees in technical communication. Now, I should mention, because I pestered so many of my former students to do this, that is skewing the data, right? So I don't know that this is fully representative. I think this population is more likely to hold a TechCom degree or certificate than the average population. But still, this is something that really wasn't prominent, say, 20, 15 years ago, and now definitely is. So that is one of the changes that I think this data identifies. Employment, we have a nice range of employment, right? Not a ton of supervisors, but otherwise, most people are mid or senior level in their career, which I think is good because we're getting people who have seen the TechCom field for a while, that understand it and have a good perspective on it, right? But it's also nice to have a range of positions represented. And most people, so this is interesting, right? Because here are their levels of employment, but a lot of people have only held one technical communication job, right? More than any other area. And so to me, this suggests that people are sticking with their technical communication jobs for a while and not jumping around necessarily. I know some people do, especially contractors. I know people in this meeting have had that experience of jumping around a lot based on contracting jobs. It looks like there is a trend, though, of people kind of keeping their job and sticking with the job that they get. Okay. And so, as far as job titles go, you will notice that what stands out here is that most of the people did not have a job title that was on this list, right? Which part of that means we need to update the list. The list is not great. But the other thing it shows is that people's job titles are kind of all over the board, right? And some people we should have put technical writer because some people in the other put technical writer instead of writer. So that's kind of a flaw in the survey design. But what you'll see is people have all kinds of job titles related to TechCom. Things like logistics specialist, outreach specialist, IT specialist, some of these job titles that weren't super familiar to me, right? And of course, we had a few people who were involved mostly in proposals, information developer, right? Program analyst, but only a few of these are sort of titles that we classically associate with TechCom. And so I think this really shows that there is a wide variety of job titles. One of the reasons this is helpful, of course, is because when you are looking for jobs on Indeed, Glassdoor, whatever, it's good to know what some of these jobs are actually called. Because I think if you're just searching technical writer, technical editor, you're missing a lot of potential jobs that you're qualified for that fall under some of these other titles. Okay. And then industry, this is really no surprise. It actually is a little bit of a surprise that engineering is so low, but otherwise, a lot of people in software, Hexagon and companies like that, and a lot of people in government and a fair amount of people in engineering. I think we have all experienced that Huntsville is a very specific TechCom market. And our data, bears that out in showing that there aren't a ton of people, say, in medical writing, which I think is a bummer because it's an exciting field and we have, 2 hospitals and a bio research facility. I wish there were more medical writing opportunities, but it really does seem like for people who are based in Huntsville, they tend to gravitate towards these industries. Now, one of the flaws of the survey that I realized when I was going through the data is we didn't ask people if their company was based here. We only asked people if they were based here. And so we don't have a sense from this data how many people say live here and work for a company in Virginia or Austin or whatever. So that's probably a change that we will want to make in the future. And I would love to get any insight on questions that we should ask next time around. I'm always looking to improve the survey. So if you have any feedback on, oh, we'd really like to know this, or ways that we can slice and dice the data, we can slice and dice any of this data any way that we want to. And so if you think of something that might be meaningful, I would love to hear kind of your ideas on that. Okay, so this was one that I added, and the list was a little bit generated by me. So it's possible that there are things that we will want to know about that weren't on the list. But what you see is a lot of people are using agile development processes, which I don't think is all that surprising. We have a lot of single sourcing and content reuse going on, which is good because it seems like for 20 years, TechCom has been talking about single sourcing and content reuse. And it seems like the field is kind of starting to catch up to the promise that we were given about the potential for single sourcing and content. A fair amount of XML, significantly less DITA. We always joke about how I would love to do a DITA workshop, but I can never find anyone who actually uses DITA to teach said workshop. But 2 people use it. So if one of these 2 people, send them my way. But it's not as popular. Topic-based authoring softwares like RoboHelp, AuthorIt, Flare are somewhat commonly used. Though I asked in just a fill in the blank question about software that people used, and overwhelmingly, Word, Office Suite was very, very popular. Of course, that's dominant in the government. It's ubiquitous everywhere. So a lot of people are using the Word, Word and the Microsoft Office suite in their jobs. Okay. And this was one that I really wanted to know. And I believe that this is largely taken from the TechCom census, this list. And this is helpful for me because I want to know what to teach students. but I think it's also helpful for everybody to kind of know what sorts of things you want to put in your portfolio. If you don't have as much experience in one of these areas that's popular, I think that it's a good idea to know sort of what the common documents that are produced are, right? So we have a lot of user guides and help topics, a lot of tutorials and training. And I was talking with our advisory board about how that's becoming more and more common, right? This shift towards training, this shift towards sort of interactive tutorials. Shockingly, more white papers than proposals. Our sample did not, I think it underrepresented the proposal writers in town. And it appears to me that one person is working on chatbot content. That's something that may increase in the coming years as more and more companies try to transition to chatbot-based help. And I have a former student who does this kind of work in Austin. And her job is to kind of curate the content that comes into the chatbot, make sure that the answers that it's giving are accurate. And this is one of the things that we've been hearing about for a few years that may eventually kind of actually start happening. Usually the predictions of the trends in TechCom are ahead of the way those trends actually roll out. So we'll see if this increases or if companies decide not to move towards chatbot content. Okay, so we had a gigantic list of skills. And it was very hard for me to figure out how to present this data. And so what I decided to do was just to pick the skills that the most people said were very, very important or important, right, to their employers. And the exact phrasing of the question was something to the effect of, when you were hired at your job, how important were these skills to your employer when they hired you? And what you'll see is overwhelmingly soft skills are dominant here, right? Only technical writing skills are actually, seventh on the list of things that the employers were concerned about. So a huge, huge emphasis on soft skills, communication, collaboration, interpersonal skills, analytical skills. So the ability to work well with other people and to work well by yourself, really dominate what these employers care about. And then further down the list with things like subject matter expertise, an understanding of the subject matter that you were writing about, and specific types of software knowledge. But these were really the skills that dominated in the importance to employers. Okay, so this one asked, how many other technical communicators do you work with? And what we see is that there is a strong, strong trend towards lone writers in Huntsville. And I don't know what people's experience is in the call, but I have heard a lot of stories. I know lone writers. I know people, they are the, writer for their 40-person government contracting company, right? And then slightly less popular was sort of a group of, 2 to 5 people as a writer. And then the writers' numbers diminish from there. So I think really what we're seeing is a lot of companies that are relying on one or very few writers to get the job done. And of course, I think everybody can speak to the frustrations that come with being a lone writer, the challenges that come with being the only writer in a team of engineers or programmers or whatever, and maybe not feeling like you have someone else who understands what it is you do or someone else to bounce ideas off of. But it looks like that is a reality for a large percentage of the tech writers in Huntsville. Okay. This is a new question that I really wanted to ask. Obviously, this was not a question that we asked 5 years ago, but you will see that the answers are really, really notable, right? And that very few people are working entirely at their office, right? So it appears that sort of not 8 to 5 coming into the office is just not something that tech writers are doing very much anymore. We have a strong percentage that work entirely remotely, and then it appears that most people are doing some version of hybrid and remote work. And it's in the notes to the slide here that I can't see right now, but I believe it's like 66% of their time is spent working remotely if they work hybrid on average, because we asked them, how often they end up or how much time they spend working. Oh, good, 64. Thank you, Joseph. I was pretty close though, off the top of my head. So I get about 2/3 of the time. So this is really a huge change from 5 years ago when we asked this question. And, it's 2024 now, almost 2025. The COVID was 2020 and beyond. It appears that this is a change that's kind of here to stay at this point. I would expect more people would have gone back to the office if they were going to go back to the office by now. Okay, so I really like this one. This is a very interesting, very surprising set of results. And this one comes from the TechCom census, right? And by the way, the essay, it's hard to fit everything on there. The essay is strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. And you'll notice that it uses a common survey methodology technique of kind of phrasing things negatively and then positively and reversing those things back and forth so that people have to pay a little more attention to the question. But I was honestly, genuinely very, very surprised by these results. So I find it difficult to work with subject matter experts in my company. 12 people disagreed and 12 people strongly disagreed, right? And working with subject matter experts is notoriously the hardest part of being a technical communicator, right? One person strongly agreed that the subject matter experts are difficult to work with. So it's encouraging news. It's surprising news. I want to dig more into this and find out kind of what's going on with all these happy technical communicators and subject matter experts. It's great news. It's a great finding. But I was surprised, just given sort of the reputation that subject matter experts and technical communicators have, in their challenges working together. People also felt that their coworkers recognized their expertise, their technical communication expertise. Again, drastically. I mean, these are, drastically skewed towards the strongly agree and agree. Now, people felt a little more balanced. These are the kind of numbers I would expect to see for all these questions. And it really only manifests here, right? And that a lot of people do feel underutilized, a lot of people don't, and everywhere in between. This is sort of the strongest range, right? Is that some people are feeling underutilized and some people are not. Job satisfaction is very, very good. And this bears out with the TechCom census data from 2018. Technical communicators tend to like their jobs a lot, which is great news, right? This chart is a bunch of good news that was surprising in a way that shows that really there's a lot of good stuff about the fields. Cody asks, was the overwhelming lean towards soft skills rather than tech writing specifically a new development, or was that consistent across prior iterations of the survey? My memory is that has been consistent forever, right? That soft skills have always been very dominant. I need to go back and look. I haven't pulled the data on the previous results, but I remember at least the 2019 results being very similar, and that people really, soft skills were dominant. And I think one of the reasons too is that pretty much every job is going to require that. And then particular jobs are going to require more specialized things. So I think that's one of the reasons for that finding is these skills are just so widely needed in whatever job you have. But that trend has, been fairly consistent as long as I remember collecting the data. So here we ask the opposite question, or we ask the question the opposite way that we asked before. And 35 out of 38 participants enjoy working with subject matter experts in their company. Again, just shocking results. Great results. I'm glad that they're enjoying it. This makes me happy. But I was very surprised to see it. I do think some of this comes down to, most technical writers love to learn things, right? And so there's the fun of learning about helicopters or software or whatever it is that you're working on. And I think technical writers are very motivated by learning, by tracking down information and kind of the satisfaction of tracking information down. But this was a really surprising finding that, again, made me happy, right? These are great recruitment tools for me as someone who's and then people overwhelmingly feel fairly compensated for their work. So either this group is especially happy, right? This is the happiest group of tech writers of the Huntsville tech writers, or tech writers in general are pretty happy in Huntsville, which is great news. I love to see that. And I certainly hope that's the case. I certainly hope that everyone is as happy as the data here shows. Okay, so these are also new questions on AI, right? So this is the first time we've asked AI, and specifically I was trying to get at, large language models, Chat GPT, and that kind of thing, because for about the past 2 years, Chat GPT and AI is really all anybody can talk about. And so the question is, how is this actually manifesting on the job? And so what we're seeing here is that based on our data and our responses, the sort of enthusiasm or hype about AI is overblown, right? No one in our sample is using these tools often, and most people aren't using them at all. And I don't know what, we have several active technical communicators in this meeting right now. And certainly speak to their experiences. We'll open up for conversation in a few minutes. But it does not appear that people are just, have fully embraced AI tools. And of course, some of this definitely has to do with the nature of Huntsville, right? And the fact that a lot of stuff cannot be put into open models because of, classification reasons. So I wonder if these results would be the same in a different market, but people are just not actively using these tools at all. Okay, so people do seem to be generally somewhat positive. People are not like overwhelmingly enthusiastic about AI. Very few people think that AI is going to make writing way, way better, right? So it's kind of a race between people who think that AI is going to make writing worse or that AI is going to make writing slightly better, which is the opinion of most people in the group, right? So again, we don't see a ton of AI hype, right? People thinking that, okay, maybe it'll improve writing and may decrease the quality of writing, but not a ton of people think like this is going to make this drastic change. And really interested in is how people felt about the ethics of using it. And here they could choose any option that they wanted, right? So, or as many options as they wanted, right? So some of these numbers represent multiple people or people answering multiple questions, right? Very few people feel that writers should just use AI to spit documents out and just like, okay, done. Chat GPT wrote it, send it, right? Similarly, very few people feel that writers ethically should not use AI in their work at all. And so in general, people seem to fall in the middle, right? So maybe you can use AI to produce documents. Weirdly, fewer people said that that writers could use AI to edit documents, which I would think would be a pretty dominant use case. And then most people said that it was basically contextual, right? It depends on what you're writing, what the context is, who the audience is. Obviously, there are, 100 research projects buried in this data. So we're only kind of skimming the surface here. But again, we see people tend to take a pretty nuanced look at AI and how they can use it in their job. And then, of course, the question that is on everybody's mind, do you believe AI will replace your job in 15 years? And this was from the TechCom census as well. And in 2018, people in the TechCom census did not feel that AI would replace their job in 15 years. I did wonder if this was going to be different. I mean, we did not have Chat GPT and its friends in 2018. no one is like 100% certain, right? That AI, no one is planning for the inevitability of AI taking a job. Some people seem a little bit worried about it, right? But the majority of people think that AI is probably or definitely not going to take their jobs, right? That they or somebody will be employed in a tech com role in 15 years. So we don't see a ton of AI hype or a ton of AI hysteria among this group of participants, which I think is super interesting and encouraging. Overall, the results of this survey are really encouraging. It's rare that you collect data and you're like, oh, this is all good news. But in this case, what we got was mostly a lot of positive news. Okay, so most people are compensated by annual salary. A few people are compensated hourly. I'm assuming that this is a freelancer or something who is compensated, by output specifically. But most people are compensated by annual salary. And again, we have good news again. Average salary is $86,219. Now, the average salary in 2019, when we did this, was $68,000. Partly that number from 2019 is low because that group was a bigger group of entry-level people, right? Just that was the people who took the survey in 2019. But that's still a big jump. So the average salary in 2020, now this comes from National. SDC National does a version of this survey as well. And fortunately, Huntsville is one of the markets that they survey, right, to collect salary data. Right. So it's kind of cool that we like pop up as one of the markets that they care about. And in 2020, 2021, the average salary was 71,240, right, for tech writers in the area. And so we're seeing a big jump here. And we saw a lot of people were senior. So I think we're skewing this direction this time in the average salary versus this, in 2019, I think we skewed entry level. In 2024, I think we're skewing more towards people who make a little more money, who've been in the field a little longer. But it's still encouraging news. I always tell my students, like, this is the kind of chart you can show your parents when they're like, oh, you're English, you're minoring in English. And 79% of people made more in 2024 than they did in 2023. No one made less. Not a single person made less money in 2023 or in 2024 than they did in 2023. Okay. Yeah. So again, a lot of people received raises. A few people were promoted, and then a few people changed jobs. But most people were given a raise at their current position, which is exciting. I mean, this is like the happiest group of tech writers like that I've seen. But that's great. I really hope, again, that this is what the entire market looks like. All right. So it is helpful to break the salaries down into categories, because I think we can kind of see here a little more specifically what the different salaries look like. And so here, average salary for 0 to 5 years is 66,582. Now, I usually like to break it from 6 to 10 and then, 11 to 14. But there were maybe like 2 people in the 6 to 10 categories. So I broke those, consolidated those together. So average salary there is 86,889, and the average salary for 15 plus years is 102,835, which I really think, especially on the ends of this poll, I think the starting average salary is maybe a little higher than some starting people are making, but I do think that average 15 plus years salary is right on based on the data that I am seeing and the job ads that I'm seeing and the way people are answering the questions. All right, and then additionally, we broke this down another way, right? So entry level is 53,196. To me, that is more representative of kind of like a true entry level salary than the number on the previous page, the 66,000. To me, that's kind of right in line with what I think I see people getting at the entry level. And then we can see things going from there. Mid-level supervisories 82, or non-supervisory 82. Mid-level supervisors are making a little bit more. Senior level people who aren't supervisors are making 89,265 on average. And then senior level supervisors, I think, are some of the ones who are pulling our averages up. at 125, 726. But again, a healthy market, people are receiving raises, they feel fairly compensated. And so it really is overall a pretty positive picture of what is going on in Huntsville. And then also one of the reasons we like to collect this data, the sort of original justification for collecting it was to help working technical communicators or new technical communicators for negotiations, right? So that's one of the reasons why this data is collected and that we want to share it with you is, to be able to say, hey, on average, this is what tech writers in Huntsville are making at these various levels, these various experiences. So hopefully this can give you some ammunition to, make sure that you are fairly compensated in the position that you have. But I believe, oh no, okay. So there's some announcements, but let's open it up for conversation first. I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts, any surprises, any data that you found particularly interesting, questions that I didn't ask in the survey that we could ask next time. I'm just kind of curious responses to this data.
Hey, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
I had several things. I'm a little bit depressed about the salaries.
Sure. Well, that's
Wow,
the
that's
problem too.
that's
If
great news though for everybody in Huntsville. Dadgummit.
well, you need to come. So Heather is in Birmingham, right? We have not. I don't
Yeah.
know what's going on in Birmingham. But
Oh,
I do hope that is one of the unintended consequences of the survey, right? Is if you, and these are averages, right? People fall below the average. But certainly, I hope that no one is depressed. It's like, wait, I'm
I'm
making,
just joking.
yeah.
That is really good though for the people up in the Huntsville area. I think it's great that you put that list together, and you're right, it can be used as ammunition. You can have a conversation with your manager and tell them, I'm doing this, this, and this. I feel like I fit in this category, and what do I need to do to get into that salary range? I think
Mhm.
that's a great idea.
I
Um,
hope so. The best case scenario for this presentation is that somebody makes more money somewhere, right? If a technical writer makes more money because I gave this presentation, I can't think of a better thing that could
yeah,
happen. So,
yeah, yeah. I guess I was thinking about the when you said there were shocking results between the relationships between tech writers and SMEs, and
mhm,
I remember I've been doing this for 25 years, or between 20 25 years, and I always remember the senior level tech writers saying, "Oh, you have to bring cookies to get people to work with you, and none of the technical people or the engineers want to work with you." Um, and I remember that, and I also remember the tech writers tended to have more like math degrees or um, engineering. They had a lot more of a technical background in
mhm,
education. But now you have um, more like English degrees. I have an English bachelor's and I have a
mhm,
Master of Communication Arts, non-technical degrees, but um, you have a lot more of those people. And that other slide that you had, the importance of soft skills, that's more important to the managers. I'm thinking maybe there's kind of a link there, not a causal link, but maybe there's something there that is showing how people now have more soft skills than they used to. And I was just thinking maybe that could be related in some way, but
mhm. No, I think that it probably is. And I agree, Heather, as far as I understand it, I've been looking at this for about 15 years. Um, and in even that amount of time, it seems like the degrees have shifted more towards, English, tech com specific degrees, whereas it used to be more, technical degrees or just sort of whatever. Um, So I definitely think there is that shift towards people with a specialization in this field. And you may be right. I think that's a great point that sort of the dominance of soft skills might be, employers want somebody who has these other skills, and we'll teach you, our subject matter experts will teach you about helicopters or servers or telecommunications equipment or whatever it is.
Yeah, the only other thing that I had on AI was that most companies, they don't permit AI, chat GBT, they don't permit that for use, and especially government
Hmm.
contracting companies or whatever,
Hmm.
they just don't allow that. So I'm kind of wondering if that has something to do with the high response and never use it.
Hmm. I
Um,
absolutely think that it does. I think if you ran this survey in Silicon Valley or New York City or something, you might get different responses. I'm not
yeah,
sure, but I'm guessing so.
totally. Um, though I am trying to use it uh, when permitted at work,
Hmm. Hmm.
but mainly when I'm trying to learn something new about software that I'm using. That's a, not, it's a public software. It's something that your company purchases and uses. I use it just to learn more about how to do something, and I also use it for getting ideas for like icebreakers at meetings
Hmm.
or that kind of stuff. Nothing that I'm writing myself, but just to get ideas on how to do something in a different way.
Hmm. Yeah, brainstorming tools. And as you see, it looks like most of the people in this survey feel that there are perfectly valid ethical use cases for AI. And I would love to dig a little more into what that looks like. But it seems like most people are kind of like you, Heather, and they're like, okay, there's some things I can do with this tool, and I'm figuring it out. And, it may eventually help me do my job better. Um, so we'll I think we are figuring it out. And I think in 10 or 15 years, whatever happens with AI, it will be normalized, and we won't kind of be having these like intense, kind of like, what do we do about AI conversations anymore. So it's actually a really interesting moment to be a part of the time in history when like this new thing is coming out. I remember when the internet was released when I was a kid, and it feels like that again, where it's like, whoa, and now we can't picture our lives without it. So it will be interesting to see kind of how AI gets adopted into our lives, because we're working on that right now. Any other thoughts? Any other questions?
Hey, Ryan. Um, with the slide that talked about the large number of people who have um, degrees in tech communications being
Mhm.
in tech com, do you think that perhaps that number is influenced because there are so many degrees and scholastic offerings in tech com now?
Mhm. Yes.
Because when I went to the STC conferences several years ago, I was just amazed at how many different people got into TechCom from from that did not have an English degree
Mhm.
or or journalism degree or what have you. It's like, how did you get into this? A lot of people simply stumbled into tech communications,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
and with the different years I had been going to the conferences, I was seeing many offerings from different universities for take-home degrees. And I can only imagine that it's only increased as the years have gone by. So I'm wondering if employers are looking at that type of degree more um, than previously, why your numbers might be so high. In
Mhm.
addition to your students, that you've
Mhm.
you've
Mhm.
pinged.
Sure. No, I absolutely agree, Beverly. I just think there are more. degrees in TechCom. I think, 30 years ago, there weren't very many. It was very hard to major in TechCom or get a certificate in TechCom. And now it's relatively easy, right? And so I think that's one of the reasons for the big uptick, right? And I hope that this is bearing out, and I think it is, in employers specifically saying, we want somebody that actually studied TechCom. And so, I'm happy if an English major gets a TechCom job, or a communications major, or journalism, or whatever. But I do think it's nice when employers emphasize, like, hey, we want someone who is trained in this particular field. So yeah, I agree, Beverly.
Well, my coworker, her degree is her background is in journalism, and so that's kind of how she got her job.
Mm-hmm.
But as editors, we have two different styles of at least querying our writers. I have a more direct approach, but that was how I was trained under Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Norman. And the other editor, she would get frustrated because if she left a comment, which would be a question, sometimes the engineers would just simply delete it. But I looked at how she asked them, and as a journalist, she asked open-ended questions.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, do you mean this or do you mean that? She would say, like, this doesn't make sense. And she wonders why they would delete her question.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't, hey, do you mean, X or Y, or like, hey, what if we use this word instead? It was much broader, much harder to answer.
Right. I would ask, did you mean this? Or I would make it a multiple choice question, or say that, hey, I'm reading it this way. Am I correct? And then her questions would be, this sounds dumb, or something like that. And what do you mean? And the engineer, I'm pretty sure, is thinking, well, I'm writing it exactly how I mean it. So, I could see how they would be frustrated with her approach versus somebody who's been trained in TechCom.
Who knows kind of the specific things to ask. Yeah, that's a really good point. I had heard people say that journalists make great technical communicators because they're so good at kind of doggedly chasing down information. They'll deal with obstruction from the governor's office or whatever. So subject matter experts, no big deal. But that's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought about that way in terms of like how what questions get asked.
Right.
Anyway. In the chat, Maureen asks, how many years of survey results do you have or can access? So I believe I have done this survey 4 or 5 times since 2012, 2014, maybe one more, 2019 and 2024. The survey has gotten much, much bigger over time. We've always done salaries, we've always done skills, we've always done industry. A lot of these other questions are new, but that's a great idea, Maureen, and that might be a student project, is to dig in and kind of map the trends a little bit, especially, to go to Cody's question earlier on the soft skills. So yeah, I would love to dig in. And also, this is the best I have done as actually like putting the survey results out into the world. We have made sort of little reports and stuff about the survey results before, but I think this is the most comprehensive that we've gotten in terms of really making sure that people can access. And that's important, and I have not always done a great job of making the results accessible. Cody comments, as far as the AI introduction in the US government settings, big ships turn slowly, and the US government is a big ship. We're already seeing startups that are targeting that sector with secure models. I think 5 years from now, we'll see significantly more integration of AI large language models in the DoD space. Curious what that will look like. I totally agree, Cody. I think that these things always take time, right, to get adopted, and especially for big organizations, big institutions. And as we saw earlier, I feel like just now people are like, single sourcing is finally kind of like caught up with the hype that, was in 2002. People were like, this single sourcing thing is going to be great. And now it seems like it's finally what it was promised to be. So it may be 5-10 years. I talked with one of our advisory board members the other day from SAIC that they have kind of an internal model, an internal large language model that they can use. So I do think that's going to happen, and sort of like more closed and secure models. So I think that problem will get solved to some extent. It'll just be interesting. You know, I'm going to keep asking this question as long as the results are interesting. So we should be able to chart these trends over time. I do hope people are right about not getting replaced by AI. I hope I'm around in 15 years to ask this question again. Other questions, comments, things you'd love to see in a future version of the survey? All right, well, thank you for attending. Before I lose you, I do want to mention a couple things that we have coming up. These are our announcements at the end. All right, so we got a lot of things going on. And we have an in-person talk on the UAH campus on Wednesday, November 6th at 6 o'clock in Library 207. We have Denny Odell, a local UX UI specialist, talking about graphic design and UX. So kind of the principles that you need for UX, graphic design principles that you need for UX, talking a little bit about careers in UX. So that should be really good. Come and check that out. It's open to the public. Parking is free on the UAH campus after 5:30, so you won't have to worry about parking. And then I really, really want to mention the STC elections are coming up. So we would love to see some people interested in officers' positions. And in particular, I really, really, really have to plug the fact that we need a treasurer very much. We cannot run this organization if we don't have a treasurer. It will cease to function. And our current treasurer, Eric Birmingham, has done this job for approximately like 15 years, and is ready for a break, a well-deserved break. So he wants to pass the torch. And so he wrote up, it's hyperlinked here, he wrote up a description of the position. And, you know, if you are as someone who is competent with, you don't have to be great, but competent with budgeting, competent with spreadsheets, we need someone to do the taxes, to make sure that all our expenses are running smoothly. We don't spend a ton of money, so it's not, you know, something where every day you're going to be doing this. It's more a few times a year. There's a little bit of a heavy lift, but we really need somebody to take this position up. If you know anybody who would be a good fit, or if you yourself are like, yes, treasurer is for me, we really, really are looking for people to run. Of course, we're welcoming people to run in all of these positions. It's always good to get new blood, new people involved. So let me know if you want more information about any of these positions, but in particular, Eric wrote up a nice detailed summary of the treasurer position. And then the other thing that we're going to introduce in 2025 is a mentorship program. And I have, again, hyperlinked here information about this program. So this is something new that we're going to be doing, where we will pair mentees who are just starting out, either students or, you know, in their first year or two in their TechCom careers, with more experienced technical communicators. So we will be looking for both mentees, people who want to be sort of mentored along, and also those experienced technical communicators. And really what we're looking for is a situation where you might partner with, you might get together once every, say, 3 months to, you know, maybe have coffee, have a Zoom meeting, whatever, to talk about what your TechCom career is like, what kinds of resources a student needs to get started, advice, looking at their resume, all of that stuff. And so, you know, if you're interested, or you know anybody that's interested, please let me know. So what we are doing is mentees do need to be STC members, but mentors do not. So if you know anybody who would be a good mentor, let me know. And then, yes, Julie says people can join or renew STC membership with our chapter, STCNA, and also STC. I heard this from leadership on Monday, that they are doing a like membership drive in November, where you get, if your membership is lapsed, you get a special deal. So we'll be sending out more information about that, because they're doing a big recruitment push. So, you know, if you have any questions, email me. You can find my email. I should have put it on the presentation, but it's on the UAH website. You can email Julie. But we really appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your Thursday to hear what turned out to be pretty good news. So I hope that you are as encouraged by the results as I am.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, Beverly. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. And I hope I'll see some